Welcome to another week of Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay, and welcome to the lockdown, the first show in which I hope you are sitting at home and not going out, unless of course you're a doctor or a part of medical fight or one of the other crucial professions that are keeping South Africa going at the moment. It's a really tough time for all of us, whether you are working on the front line or whether you're just having to shack up and hold up and hope to get through the worst of this. And perhaps you've already been through the virus. I know a few people, Cameron van der Berg for instance, the Olympic athlete who got it in London, went through a really nasty time, and he's a young fit Olympic athlete, so if it can happen to him, it can really happen to any of us, which means if you don't have to leave the house, please make sure you are staying in. And if you're staying in, you may well want a glass of wine as part of what you're doing to pass the time. Now, before I go into the wine, I'll make the same comment I've been making on our Facebook live shows, which are going out at 5 o'clock every Tuesday and Thursday, discussing wine live and doing a live tasting. And that is, certainly have a few glasses of wine, do enjoy them, make sure it's wine that you do like, but don't have too much of it. A, because you probably don't have that much, you don't want to run out of it, but far more importantly, just for health reasons, you shouldn't be drinking too much anyway, but also your immune system is so important in fighting off corona, and too much alcohol is going to compromise that. So not sparingly, but drink modestly, and make sure that whatever you do drink is stuff that you are enjoying. And to that end, I have got some wine today that I think fits in a really important category for most of us at the moment. We're maybe getting to the shops once a week, probably in and out, trying to get whatever you need, not panic buying, but certainly stocking up for the week so you don't need to get back in there too often. And so you want to be able to get some wine while you're there that is going to get you through that week, and that gives you a really nice bottle of wine, but also not too expensive, because for a lot of people there's an uncertainty about what our future is economically. Perhaps you've already lost your job, maybe your job's uncertain, maybe your particular business might really be struggling in the wake of the corona shutdown, and so you probably don't want to be spending vast amounts of money on wine. If of course you're able to, then that's fantastic, and the higher end wine producers will be very happy with that. But for many of us, I think it's looking at wine and being a little more conservative than usual. So this week and next week, I've got a selection of 4 bottles a week of wines that I think fall into that space. They're still really nice bottles of wine, but they're definitely in the affordable space. So what I've done, I've made sure all of these wines, both this week and next week, are 100 Rand or less, in some cases significantly so, and I hope that there's a bottle or two amongst that selection that matches both your palate and your budget. If you get that combination right, then you've done pretty well. And the first of those is from one of the very first wine estates I went to when I came to South Africa. Went on a wine route with some university friends in my first year out to Rawsonville. Andy Jury, if you're watching this, Mark van Bunigen, if you're watching this, you may well remember heading out. We visited a number of estates, Dupreer, which will feature next week with their excellent Pollers Red, and this one, the DuToitskloof cellar in Rawsonville. That broader area, Rawsonville, the Breede Valley, heading up to Robertson, is home of not just some of the best value wine in South Africa, it's some of the best value wine in the world. You can take a bottle from many of these estates and set it up against wine from right around the world, and when you combine the quality and value, which is generally South Africa's wine hallmark, but especially for this broader area, and you're just getting such extraordinary value. Now, this DuToitskloof Sauvignon Blanc is probably not the one you're going to find on the shelves right now, because as you can see, it is 2017, so it is a little bit older. We tend to drink our Sauvignon Blanc in South Africa very young. We've had this conversation many times on this show, but Sauvignon Blanc can certainly be drunk fresh. It's the way many people enjoy it. They like it extra cold and extra fresh, and if that is how you like it, then absolutely fine. This will just have aged slightly, so it'll change the texture. It won't be quite so fresh, it'll be quite so acidic, but I think it's, for me, for my palate, a perfect time to drink it. But the one that you'll find on the shelves will certainly be a 2019. There's even a chance it could be a 2020. I've already had a couple of 2020 whites that have been sent my way by different winemakers, and Sauvignon Blanc is usually the first one to hit shelves at about this time of year for the earlier releases. In terms of price, before we get into what it tastes like, you're probably between 60 and 70 Rand a bottle. You should be able to find this. Of course, if you head down to Rawsonville, and hopefully it won't be too long until we're allowed to do such things as going on wine routes, because Unfortunately, going on wine routes was not considered an essential activity in the exempt status for leaving your home during lockdown. But Villiers-Tierne, I think still the winemakers down at DuToitskloof, put on a great show, and it's always a really friendly place to go and a great place to stock up on lots of very good value wine. And I said this might not be too fresh, but there's still a nice wave of citrus coming out there. Now that, for me, at 60 odd round a bottle, is really, really good value. It's still fresh, it's still crisp, it's got a nice bit of green apple crunch. If you're a Sauvignon Blanc fan, then this is certainly one to look for. So put that on your list, and also put a list of somewhere to visit. Get down to Rawsonville. It's not as well known as some of our other wine routes, but it's a really cool area with some really cool people and some really cool wine. Then on to an estate that I would have been to a week or so ago had the Absa Cape Epic not been cancelled, because this is an estate I discovered on my last visit to Wellington on the Absa Cape Epic. This is Imbuko, and straight away you can see two stickers that don't often sit side by side on a bottle of wine. One of those is a best value sticker, and then on the other side a double gold from Michelangelo. Now, the Michelangelo Awards are fantastic awards. They're judged by judges from all over the world. And what I love about them is you often see wineries you wouldn't expect appear in that particular space. If I look at the 2019 Michelangelo Awards, the best Sauvignon Blanc was won by Arabella, and I think their Sauvignon Blanc's about 35-40 rand a bottle. It's not what you would have expected to win, and you can debate the merits thereof, but it's a group of international judges who've come together and they've said, you know what, we really like this, and that is exactly what they said about the Imbuko. They've given it double gold for a wine that will cost you, you're looking at about 45 rand a bottle, which is really, really well priced. And it's this case a 2017 Chenin, so like the Sauvignon, just a little bit older, a little bit of bottle aging in it, just to smooth it out a touch. You're probably looking at most Chenins on the shelves now at 2018 or 2019, unless there's a particularly higher end bottle that's been kept back a year or two by a vineyard, but 2018, even a 2019, should be drinking delightfully. And so this is a label to look out for. Charming little place. I've never been to it before. Discovered it almost by accident. I think I took a wrong turn looking for somewhere else. Discovered it. You sell wine? Of course I'll come in and say hello and do a little tasting, which I did. So my natural inclination is towards a Chenin over a Sauvignon Blanc. There are people who swear by one and people who swear by the other. I drink both of them happily, but given the choice, I'll go for a Chenin. I just feel it's got a little bit more depth. I love that slight creaminess to it. Not overly pronounced, but it just sits there quietly in the background and helps that wine to slide over the palate. Now, while still retaining some beautiful fruit, and in this case, sort of white peaches and there's a tiny little lemon zest in there as well. And a terrific wine for what I hope you're going to be doing a lot of during the lockdown, which is something we don't tend to do so much anymore in our day-to-day life, which is sitting down around a dining room table, and not one parent sitting at a desk somewhere finishing off some work, the other one on the phone with a late conference call, kids eating around the couch with meals on laps, kind of the modern life that's really not that healthy. And if there are some silver linings to this corona, it's not just the world's environment, but our own personal and family environments that might benefit from it. And sitting around the table, opening a bottle of Chenin Blanc with the right sort of food. I love to make a salmon gnocchi with mascarpone and some spinach and a bit of lemon zest. I picked up the lemon zest on this. I think that would be a perfect combination, but also a nice time to play around with some food and wine while you've got the time, and that's certainly something we have at the moment. But if your time does include a trip to the shops, and you can find some Imbuko at 45 rand a bottle, buy a case. Well, then on to a wine that you will definitely get in your local Pick n Pay, because it is exclusive to Pick n Pay. I first discovered this range last year. It comes out of France. Jacques Mouton was one of the first French Huguenots who kicked off the tradition of indulgence that Franschhoek is now famous for. They gave us a valley that produces some of the finest restaurants in the country and some outstanding wine. This pays tribute, the Madeleine, to his daughter, Jacques' daughter. He's buried in the valley, and it also celebrates the greater Huguenot tradition, the French Huguenots who came out and added such a rich slice of culture to South Africa in general and to the food and wine of South Africa in particular. So this is the Chardonnay. It is a wooded Chardonnay, and it's 80-90 rand a bottle if memory serves. And it's wine that is particularly good if you've got somebody in your locked down household who's not that fond of Chardonnay. And there are still lingering pockets of resistance to the charms of Chardonnay. It's wooded, but not aggressively so. Thankfully, a trend that seems to have mostly caught on for those South African winemakers who are using wood in their Chardonnay. It's kind of like truffle oil wood. Truffle oil, if you use it sparingly, fantastic, but far too many chefs throw it in a little too liberally, and then that is all you can taste at the expense of everything else. That's what we used to do with wood, with far too much Chardonnay, and you're really just chewing through a wooden crate instead of drinking a beautiful glass of wine. Yeah, so the wood is there, but it's a component as opposed to the driving force. There's some great vanilla in there. Some soft stone fruit. Almost a little bit of sort of pine nuttiness to it, which would make it work perfectly with one of my favourite dishes. You might have seen this on the Dan Nicholl show a few years ago. I went to Marble, David Higgs's restaurant, with Chris Forrest, the comedian who won Celebrity MasterChef, and we had a cook-off, which David said I won. David did receive a case of wine afterwards, but that had nothing to do with it. And what I made on that particular day, amongst other dishes, was one of my very favourite dishes, which sounds really grand and important, and it's important to call it this when you have people around for dinner: a deconstructed basil pesto risotto, which basically just means throwing lots of stuff in with risotto, including basil, and included in that dish, along with some white wine and stock and everything else you normally use to make risotto, lots of fresh basil leaves, are some roasted pine nuts, which I would pop into the oven. Try not to burn. I think 1 out of 3 times I generally get them blackened and have to toss them away, which are not great because they're not the cheapest things, but they do have a lovely, lovely flavour. And that risotto, I think, would be perfect for this because it's creamy, it's got those pine nuts, and you're getting a creamy, very slightly nutty. So, beautifully balanced Chardonnay there. So I think Mr. Mouton would be happy with the wine celebrating his legacy, and I think you'll be happy if you buy it, not just for the quality of the wine, but also for what is a very approachable price. Da-da! And then on to another Chardonnay and another really good value bottle. Now this is Rooiberg out in Robertson. Robertson, as I mentioned earlier, really good value part of the winemaking world. Rooiberg, an estate, does those big bottles of red. It's got a really good, strong history of making some quality wine at prices that you do look at twice and think, well, can it actually be that good? If that's what it costs, then you try it and realise you're getting a great deal. Now this sits at the very top end of what they produce. This is their reserve Chardonnay. Now a lot of reserve Chardonnays, once you see that word reserve, immediately you're going over the 200, sometimes 300, possibly even 400 rand mark. There are some of the top end Chardonnays that are commanding those sorts of prices. And not to say they don't deserve them, a lot of that wine is outstanding, but here you've got a bottle of reserve Chardonnay that comes in at about 95 rand a bottle, so under that 100 mark I mentioned earlier. You can see at the top it's picked up 4 stars from Mr. Platter, so the Platter team definitely saw something in it. There's also a double gold from Michelangelo, and this is 2016. I've been keeping this, it's my last bottle of 2016, so that's just how much this show means to me. I'm pouring it out and drinking it now. And probably because it's a year or two older, just a slightly more golden colour. It's aged just a touch. And that is what I would expect from a Chardonnay from a slightly drier, slightly warmer part of the world. There's lots of cream in there, there's lots of toast, there's lots of vanilla. The normal boxes you tick with a Chardonnay. It's often hard to come up with new ways to describe wine, but particularly this sort of Chardonnay, because it sits in such an established frame of reference. Again, terrific to open this over the right sort of food. Seafood is generally spoken of, but I'm also a fan of something a little spicier. I've been quite often on the braai of late, a combination of having a lot of it in stock and also being fairly lazy. Instead of making up my own marinade, just tossing a bottle of Nando's marinade over. I had some of their garlic piri the other day, and the lovely thing about Chardonnay is that it can both cut through with the acid it has, some of that spice, but also complemented with that cream, and with a curry dish or a slightly spicier dish, Chardonnay, much like Chenin, can do a really good job. And at just under 100 grand for a better Chardonnay, definitely one to look at, including your shopping list, along with those 600 toilet rolls and 4,000 litres of hand sanitizer. So there we go, there is your list of wine for this week. It is all wine that is made to combine value with quality. I think if I had to pick one of those four, that Imbuko just at 45 rand a bottle and delivering a really solid Chenin Blanc. I do like that Jacques Mouton Chardonnay as well. All four of them though have definitely got their merits, and depending on your favourite grape, when you are out on your quick shopping trip, wrapped up in a mask, go and have a look in your white wine section, see if any of these are here, but also do a little bit of exploring around. There really is some terrific value to be found in South African wine, and at a time like this, value is a really important part of how we are doing our shopping. Please keep safe, please stay at home as much as possible, enjoy your wine, but enjoy in moderation, and I'll see you back again next week for some wine of a red variety that also hopefully suits your budget. Cheers.